You ever feel like the pressure to be perfect is actually what's holding you back? You know, that fear of making just one little mistake is stopping you from even trying something new? Well, today, we're going to dive into a really powerful story from a young speaker named Kyle. He completely changed his relationship with success, all by learning to embrace imperfection. So let's get into how he did it.
This one quote from Kyle, man, it gets right to the heart of his whole struggle. He was stuck in a world where mistakes weren't learning opportunities, they were just failures. And that fear, it became a cage. This is the story of how he finally found the key. All right, so let's start at the beginning, in what Kyle himself calls the competition trap. This was his reality, day in and day out, in this super high-pressure academic world that really only cared about being perfect.
Now, what's so wild about this is the total disconnect. I mean, on the outside, Kyle looked like the perfect student. He was racking up awards, medals, you name it. But on the inside, it was a completely different story. Even with all that success, he was dealing with really low self-esteem, he hated any kind of attention, and he just felt like he was being forced to be somebody he wasn't. And here's the real cost of all that pressure. That constant need to be perfect wasn't just stressful, it was actively killing his creativity and his natural curiosity to learn. I mean, why would you risk trying something new if you knew one little mistake could cost you everything? It just felt safer to stay put.
Even if it was totally unfulfilling.
But every story like this has a turning point, right? For Kyle, that moment came when he hesitantly decided to join a youth leadership program, or YLP. And that experience, he said, was like a total breath of fresh air.
So, when he first joined, Kyle was still looking at things through that old competitive lens. He was a native English speaker, and a lot of the other students weren't, so he kind of thought his fluency would give him an edge. He was still thinking about how he stacked up against everyone else. But he figured out pretty fast that this place, it operated by a completely different set of rules.
And this is where you really see the difference. He was so inspired by his classmates, who, even if they weren't the most fluent speakers, they just spoke with so much passion and confidence. They didn't care if they stuttered or made a grammar mistake, because in this new environment, nobody was judging. The focus wasn't on being perfect. It was all about just participating and encouraging each other.
And this is when it all just clicked for Kyle. He had this huge realization that changed everything. The YLP, it wasn't about beating the person sitting next to you, it was about becoming a better version of yourself. The only real competition was with the person you were yesterday.
This whole new way of thinking gave him something he'd never ever had in his old environment: permission to make mistakes. And that simple permission slip, that was the key that unlocked his path to real, honest-to-goodness progress.
Kyle broke it down into this really simple but powerful logic. To be creative, you need space. That space has to feel safe enough to make mistakes. And those mistakes, they're not failures, they're lessons. And of course, those lessons are what fuel your progress. It's this amazing cycle, but it can only get started when you take away that fear of not being perfect.
And all this led him to this huge shift in his thinking, a whole new philosophy he calls better over best. It's really about completely redefining what success even means in the first place. He uses this awesome analogy for this. Chasing the best is like climbing a mountain. It's a fixed destination. Once you get to the very top, well, where do you go from there? Your purpose is kind of gone, and all you can do is go back down. But striving to be better, now that's a continuous journey. Your purpose is just constant growth, and mistakes aren't these terrifying cliffs, they're the actual fuel you use for the climb.
He even applied this to his whole idea of what leadership is. You know, it's not about being this flawless, perfect person on a pedestal. A good leader isn't the best. A good leader is someone who is always getting better so they can better serve the people around them. It's a living process, not some static title you win.
So, what happened when Kyle actually started living this new mindset? What did it actually look like in his life? Let's check out the results of this big shift.
The change was just dramatic. Instead of all that pressure, he felt this deep sense of fulfillment. And without the fear of failure hanging over him, his creativity just came roaring back. He started making music again. He discovered he had this hidden talent for public speaking. But most importantly, he felt more confident and just better. He was finally free to just explore things without any pressure.
This timeline just captures his new outlook so perfectly. He can look at his past, celebrate where he is right now, and get excited about his future potential. The focus is always on that forward momentum. It's not about being perfect today. It's about the amazing promise of who you're becoming tomorrow.
And that kind of brings us to our final thought here. Kyle's story is such a powerful reminder that our greatest growth is so often waiting for us just on the other side of our fear of failure. So it's worth asking yourself, what's the one mistake you're avoiding that might be the very thing you need to unlock your own path to fulfillment?